Let's begin with a truth most people never tell you: the strongest minds are not born, they are built. And like any form of strength, mental strength is a result of training. Intentional, disciplined, uncomfortable training. The kind that no one sees. The kind that doesn't show up in social media posts or highlight reels. It's what happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you're choosing how to respond to adversity, to failure, to uncertainty. Training your mind is not about pretending you're okay. It's not about suppressing emotions or avoiding pain. It's about building a system of thought that's resilient enough to absorb the blows of life and still stand up with clarity and conviction. You want to be unbreakable. Then train your mind to separate pain from identity. You may experience failure, but that doesn't make you a failure. You may feel lost, but that doesn't mean you are worthless. If your identity is built on outcomes, you will crumble when outcomes fail. If it's built on values, process, and growth, you will adapt, not break. Here's what most people miss: your mind doesn't rise to the level of your goals. It falls to the level of your habits. What do you do when stress rises? What's your default thought when plans go sideways? Those moments are your mental operating system in action. If you haven't trained it, it'll default to fear, self-pity, or blame. But if you've trained it, really trained it, you respond with reflection, perspective, and discipline. Start small. When you wake up in the morning, before the world makes demands of you, take back control of your focus. Don't reach for your phone. Don't dive into someone else's urgency. Sit with your thoughts. Practice gratitude. Set your intention. That's not a motivational trick. That's a neurochemical reality. You're training your brain to focus on what matters before distraction takes over. And when setbacks hit, and they will, use them. Don't just bounce back. Learn to bounce forward. Look at your reaction. What did you tell yourself? What meaning did you assign to the moment? Because the meaning you assign determines the strength you gain. Weak minds ask, why me? Strong minds ask, what now? And train for boredom. Not every moment is a crisis. Not every day is a battle. Some of the most important growth happens in the quiet repetition of showing up, doing the work, and not quitting when the shine wears off. The ones who endure don't need constant motivation. They've replaced motivation with discipline, and that's what makes them unstoppable. You want to be unbreakable? Then make this your practice. Respond, don't react. Focus on what you can control. Build routines that serve your long-term vision. Expect resistance and meet it with curiosity, not fear. Master your self-talk. Replace "I can't" with "how can I," and your entire world starts to shift. In the end, life won't always give you comfort. It won't always give you fairness. But it will always give you a choice to train your mind or let the world train it for you. And if you train it right, nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever break you. 5K Wautas OFTSHI mental strength is built, not born. It comes from intentional and consistent training of thoughts and reactions. Your identity must be rooted in values and growth, not outcomes. In order to remain resilient in failure or uncertainty, daily habits and thought patterns, especially under stress, are the real indicators of a trained mind. Discipline outperforms motivation. Enduring progress is shaped in ordinary moments, not just through crisis or inspiration. A trained mind focuses on response over reaction, control over chaos, and purpose over comfort. This is the foundation of becoming unbreakable. Mental strength is built, not born. It comes from intentional and consistent training of thoughts and reactions. This idea challenges the widespread belief that some people are just naturally stronger, more disciplined, or more emotionally resilient than others. The truth is, mental strength is not a gift, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and refined over time. It requires effort, intention, and repetition, just like building muscle or mastering a new language. The more you train it, the more natural it becomes, but the less you work on it, the more it weakens when pressure arrives. At its core, training your mind starts with awareness. Most people go through life reacting to everything that happens to them without ever questioning where those reactions come from. They assume their feelings are facts, their thoughts are truths, and their habits are just who they are. But that mindset keeps them stuck. If you want to build real mental strength, you have to start by stepping back and observing your thoughts, especially when things don't go your way. What do you tell yourself when you fail, when you're rejected, when plans fall apart? That internal dialogue is the training ground. If your self-talk is always critical, hopeless, or defensive, then you're reinforcing a mindset of weakness. But if you train yourself to speak with perspective, accountability, and possibility, you start rewiring your brain to respond rather than react. Mental strength isn't about being emotionless. It's not about pretending everything is fine or pushing down your feelings. It's about developing the ability to sit with those emotions, understand them, and choose a response that aligns with your values rather than your impulses. Emotional awareness is part of the training. It's how you stop letting fear drive decisions. It's how you hold space for frustration without lashing out. It's how you keep going even when motivation disappears. Strong minds are not those that never feel weak. They're the minds that have learned how to process that weakness, move through it, and not let it control the narrative. Another critical part of mental training is the ability to delay gratification and stay focused on long-term outcomes over short-term feelings. That doesn't sound exciting, but it's the difference between those who build a life of growth and those who live on cycles of short-lived motivation. For example, someone who has trained their mind can resist the urge to quit when results don't show up immediately. They've learned that the absence of quick success doesn't mean failure, it means keep going. They don't chase comfort, they chase progress. And that kind of discipline doesn't show up by accident. It's the result of hundreds of small decisions, waking up early, saying no to distractions, finishing what they start, even when it's inconvenient or boring. There's also an element of exposure. You don't get mentally strong by hiding from adversity. You get stronger by facing challenges, learning from them, and doing it again. Every setback is an opportunity to sharpen your resilience. Every uncomfortable moment is a test that strengthens your tolerance. Mental strength isn't something you read about or watch others display. It's something you earn by living through the hard stuff and choosing not to let it break you. And the key word is choosing. Every situation, no matter how unfair or painful, comes with a choice. Will I let this define me, or will I define my response to it? Strong minds always choose the latter. What most people overlook is that consistency beats intensity. You don't have to make massive changes overnight. You don't have to wake up one day and suddenly become mentally unshakable. What you do have to do is show up every day with the intention to think better, to respond better, to act better. That means reading the right things, surrounding yourself with people who challenge your mindset, creating routines that support your goals, and constantly refining the way you process what happens around you. It's just like you wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to be in peak physical condition. You can't read one motivational quote and expect to be mentally invincible. You train by repetition, by failure, by showing up again and again. Ultimately, the strongest people are not the ones who have it all figured out. They're the ones who have learned how to get back up, how to keep perspective, and how to stay focused on what really matters. And none of that is natural. All of that is trained. Your identity must be rooted in values and growth, not outcomes, in order to remain resilient in failure or uncertainty. When your sense of self is built on what you achieve, how people perceive you, or what results you can produce, you put yourself in a fragile position. Because outcomes are never fully in your control. Markets change, people change, situations shift. If your self-worth is tied to success, then every failure becomes personal. If people reject your idea, you feel rejected. If something doesn't go your way, you question your worth. That's a dangerous pattern because it means your confidence is always one step away from collapse. The moment you don't get the result you wanted, your foundation cracks. But when your identity is rooted in your values, what you stand for, what you believe in, how you behave under pressure, you become more stable. Values are internal. They don't shift when the scoreboard does. You can be someone who values integrity, discipline, curiosity, or service, and you can live by those values whether you're winning or losing. That kind of identity creates emotional consistency. You don't feel like a different person just because something went wrong. You don't spiral when things don't go to plan. You stay grounded because you know who you are regardless of how things turn out. The other key piece is growth. If you identify as someone who is always learning, always improving, always evolving, then failure doesn't threaten you. It fuels you. A growth identity turns mistakes into data, not definition. Instead of thinking, I failed, so I must not be good enough, you think, I failed, so here's what I can learn and apply next time. That shift sounds simple, but it changes everything. Because it means you're no longer afraid of trying. You're not paralyzed by the idea of being wrong. You don't need to get it perfect the first time because you understand that who you are is not fixed. You're a work in progress, and that's a powerful place to operate from. When your identity is outcome-based, you often chase the approval of others. You want to be seen as successful. You want recognition, and when that doesn't come, you feel invisible or inadequate. But when you operate from a value-based, growth-centered mindset, your motivation becomes internal. You measure progress by how well you lived your principles today, not by what applause you did or didn't receive. That gives you control back. You can't always control how people respond, but you can control whether you acted with courage, whether you took the next right step, whether you chose character over comfort. Think about the people who stay strong in crisis, not because they always win, but because they stay centered. They don't need validation to stay committed. They're not crushed by setbacks. That's not magic, and it's not personality. That's identity work. They've done the mental training to define themselves by something deeper than results. They can lose a job, fail a test, get criticized, miss an opportunity, and still show up with clarity and purpose. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because their self-worth was never dependent on things going perfectly. This kind of mindset has to be developed intentionally. You have to ask yourself hard questions. What do I believe in, regardless of what I achieve? What kind of person do I want to be, even if no one notices? What does success mean to me beyond external validation? And when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, you use those moments to reinforce the answers. You remind yourself, even in failure, I stayed honest. Even in uncertainty, I chose courage. Even when I didn't get the result, I honored my values. That's how you build an unshakable identity. And with that kind of identity, pressure doesn't break you, it reveals you. You don't collapse in failure because your foundation was never built on winning. It was built on becoming. And becoming is always available no matter what happens. When you define yourself by growth, you are never finished and never stuck. Every situation becomes a step forward, not because it feels good, but because it shapes who you're becoming. And in the long run, that makes you not only stronger, but freer. Daily habits and thought patterns, especially under stress, are the real indicators of a trained mind. It's easy to talk about strength when everything is going well, but real mental strength is revealed in how you think, behave, and respond when life puts pressure on you. Stress doesn't invent weakness, it exposes it. And it doesn't just expose how you feel, it exposes how you've trained your mind to function when clarity is hard to find. The truth is, no matter how many books you read or speeches you listen to, your mind doesn't rise to the level of your intentions, it falls to the level of your habits. What you do every single day, the small choices that seem insignificant, those are what shape how your mind performs when it matters most. The way you start your mornings, how you deal with discomfort, how you process criticism, how you talk to yourself in failure, these are all part of your mental programming. And programming is built through repetition. You don't become calm under pressure because you decided to be. You become calm because you've practiced controlling your breath, regulating your emotions, and challenging your negative thoughts long before the pressure came. Thought patterns under stress reveal whether your default settings are reactive or intentional. Some people go straight into panic, blame, or avoidance when things go wrong, not because they're weak, but because they've never practiced any other response. Others take a pause, ask better questions, shift their focus to what they can control, not because they were born that way, but because they've conditioned their mind through habits that emphasize clarity, responsibility, and composure. The difference is not talent, it's training. Consider how most people handle stress. They overthink, they catastrophize, they spiral into worst-case scenarios. That doesn't happen because of situation alone. It happens because their daily thought loops have programmed their minds to search for danger, doubt, and defeat. It becomes automatic. But you can rewire those loops. You can replace "I can't handle this" with "I've handled worse before." You can replace "this is too much" with "let's focus on the next small step." These phrases sound simple, but when repeated consistently, they change your default reaction. That's mental training. It's not glamorous and it's not instant. But over time, it builds a mind that works for you, not against you. The way you handle stress is also tied to how you treat your routines. A mind without structure is more vulnerable to chaos. When you build consistent habits, waking up with intention, managing your time, taking care of your body, reflecting on your progress, you create a stable environment where your mind feels anchored, even when life is unstable. Think of daily habits like the gym for your brain. Just like you wouldn't expect to run a marathon without conditioning your body, you can't expect to face life's challenges with strength if you haven't been mentally conditioning every day. Training your mind doesn't mean you won't feel overwhelmed. It means that even when you do, you know how to return to your center. It means you've built tools, deep breathing, journaling, mental reframing, healthy detachment, value-based decisions that guide your response. These tools don't come naturally. They come through choosing them again and again, especially when the easier option is to react emotionally. Every time you make that choice, you build a new neural path, you reinforce a pattern, and over time, that pattern becomes your new default. Many people wait for a crisis before thinking about their mental habits. They wait until the stress hits, and then they realize they don't have the tools to manage it. But the real work happens before the chaos. Mental strength is not a reaction, it's a preparation. You prepare through repetition. You prepare by being intentional in the small, quiet moments. And when you train your thoughts daily, your mind learns how to navigate pressure with clarity instead of confusion. Stress is inevitable. Discomfort is guaranteed, but suffering caused by poor mental habits is optional. When you train your mind consistently, you start to notice the space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. And the more you practice using it, the stronger you get. You stop being controlled by old patterns and you start becoming the kind of person who thrives even when things don't go your way. The most powerful thing you can do is commit to daily training, not occasional fixes. Because when the pressure comes, and it always will, you don't want to rely on hope or motivation. You want to rely on the systems you've already built, the habits you've already practiced, and the mindset you've already trained. That's how real strength is revealed. Discipline outperforms motivation. Enduring progress is shaped in ordinary moments, not just through crisis or inspiration. Motivation is powerful, but it's also unreliable. It comes and goes, driven by emotion, energy, and external factors. One day you feel fired up, ready to take on the world, and the next day you can't even get out of bed without a battle. Relying on motivation is like relying on the weather. It may give you momentum, but it doesn't give you consistency. Discipline, on the other hand, is a commitment to show up regardless of how you feel. It's the decision to act on what you know needs to be done, not on what you feel like doing in the moment. That decision, made repeatedly, creates long-term change and unshakable resilience. Most people start with good intentions. They set goals, make plans, tell themselves they're ready for change. But when the excitement fades, when the reality of discomfort sets in, they wait for motivation to return. And while they wait, they stall. Discipline doesn't wait. It moves. Even slowly, even imperfectly, it keeps moving. That's the difference between people who build something meaningful and those who keep restarting. Discipline bridges the gap between what you want and what it takes to get there. It's the quiet, often boring, often repetitive effort that keeps you moving forward when inspiration is nowhere to be found. The truth is, real progress is forged in ordinary days. Not in the highlights, not in the dramatic breakthroughs, but in the grind of everyday effort. The decision to stick to your routine, to honor your commitment, to do the work even when no one is watching, those are the moments that shape your future. Anyone can be consistent when they're motivated. Few people can be consistent when they're tired, discouraged, or bored. But those who are, that's where the separation happens. That's where the results stack up. Not all at once, but over time. Discipline compounds. Every act of follow-through strengthens your internal trust. You start to believe in yourself, not because of what you feel, but because of what you prove through action. Discipline also creates stability. When life becomes chaotic, when plans fall apart, when stress hits hard, your habits become your anchor. If you've trained yourself to show up no matter what, you don't lose momentum just because the environment changed. You have a system. That system protects you from emotional extremes. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you something to stand on, something to return to. A disciplined person doesn't rely on willpower in the moment. They've already made the decision in advance. It's part of who they are, and that identity is what keeps them grounded when circumstances become unpredictable. Another reason discipline outperforms motivation is that discipline builds trust within yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce your sense of integrity. Every time you choose effort over excuses, you strengthen your character. That inner trust becomes your confidence, not the shallow kind based on appearance or achievements, but the deep kind built on evidence that you will do what needs to be done. Motivation makes you feel good in the moment. Discipline makes you feel proud in the long run. People often wait for motivation to strike before they act, not realizing that action itself is what creates momentum. When you act first, especially when it's hard, you often generate the very motivation you were waiting for. It's backwards from how we're taught to think. We believe we need to feel ready in order to start. But the truth is, starting is what makes you feel ready. Showing up consistently through all moods and mindsets teaches your brain that discomfort is not danger. It trains you to push the resistance, to tolerate boredom, and to find purpose in repetition. That mental toughness becomes your advantage. While others are still negotiating with their feelings, you're building. The most successful and resilient people aren't the ones who are always motivated. They're the ones who have made discipline a habit. They've trained themselves to keep showing up, to stay focused on the mission, and to move forward whether it feels good or not. They understand that feelings are real but not always reliable. Discipline is what picks up where motivation ends. And it's in those ordinary, often invisible acts of discipline, waking up early, practicing the basics, sticking to the plan, that lasting transformation takes root. A trained mind focuses on response over reaction, control over chaos, and purpose over comfort. This is the foundation of becoming unbreakable. In every moment of challenge, there is a gap between what happens and what you do next. Most people move through that gap unconsciously. Something goes wrong, someone says something triggering, circumstances change, and they react without thinking. That reaction is often emotional, impulsive, or defensive. It comes from fear, pride, ego, or habit. But a trained mind lives in that gap. It slows down, it observes, it chooses the response rather than being controlled by the reaction. That one decision, to respond instead of react, is what separates those who break under pressure from those who adapt and move forward. Reaction is automatic. It's survival mode. It's the brain doing what it's used to doing. But response is intentional. It's a choice made with clarity, grounded in self-awareness and guided by principles, not just emotion. A reactive mind says, I can't believe this happened to me, and spirals into frustration or blame. A responsive mind says, this is what's happening now, what can I do about it? That shift in framing gives you your power back. It doesn't deny the difficulty, but it prevents you from being consumed by it. Every time you respond with perspective, you train your brain to process adversity with wisdom rather than fear. That kind of training doesn't happen by accident. It's practiced daily. Control over chaos is another cornerstone of mental strength. The world will always offer chaos, unexpected events, stress, uncertainty, conflict. You don't control the external, but you do control how much of it you internalize. A trained mind learns to filter the noise. It recognizes what's worth attention and what's not. It doesn't panic over everything it can't control. Instead, it narrows focus to the actions, attitudes, and decisions within reach. It asks, what can I influence right now? And lets go of the rest. That control is not about force or denial. It's about discipline. It's the discipline to stay grounded when others are losing their balance. The discipline to choose action when others freeze. And the discipline to remain calm even when your environment is loud, messy, or unpredictable. Living from a place of purpose instead of comfort is what transforms ordinary minds into exceptional ones. Comfort is easy. It asks nothing of you. It gives you temporary relief but costs you long-term progress. A comfort-seeking mind avoids risk, avoids discomfort, and avoids anything that challenges the ego. But a purpose-driven mind welcomes growth even when it's hard. It pushes through resistance because it sees beyond the moment. It knows why it's showing up. That why becomes an anchor in hard times. When things get difficult, and they always do, it's not motivation or pleasure that keeps you going, it's purpose. Purpose answers the question, what's worth the pain, and gives meaning to the struggle. When you operate from purpose, your actions are aligned with your values, not your mood. Comfort will try to convince you to stop. It will offer distractions, shortcuts, and excuses. But comfort never leads to strength. A trained mind knows that temporary discomfort is the price of lasting resilience. It doesn't fear hard work or setbacks because it has chosen a standard higher than ease. It measures success not by how good something feels, but by how well it aligns with a bigger mission. That mission may not always come with rewards or recognition, but it builds a core of unshakable self-respect. Mental strength is built through thousands of micro decisions, small moments where you could react, but you choose to respond, where you could chase comfort, but you stay with purpose, where you could focus on chaos, but you stay rooted in what you can control. Those moments don't always feel dramatic or important, but they add up. Each one strengthens your inner foundation. Over time, those choices become habits. Habits become your mindset. And that mindset becomes your identity. Not just someone who is calm, focused, and strong, but someone who has trained for it, earned it, and lives it every single day. That's how a person becomes unbreakable, not through luck, but through discipline, awareness, and a relentless commitment to mental mastery. In the end, the ability to become unbreakable isn't about avoiding difficulty, failure, or discomfort. It's about training your mind to face those things with clarity, discipline, and purpose. It's about choosing to build strength before you need it. When your identity is grounded in values and growth, when your habits are intentional, when you act from discipline rather than waiting for motivation, and when you respond instead of react, you begin to develop a mental foundation that doesn't shake under pressure. This kind of mindset isn't built overnight. It's shaped in the quiet choices you make daily, especially when no one's watching. The world will test you, life will challenge you, and circumstances will shift. But if you've trained your mind the right way, nothing, not failure, not rejection, not chaos will ever break you.